All right, so let's move on to TV. So, Doug, you want to start with Dark Crystal?
Oh, I do.
Let's talk about Dark
Yeah,
Crystal.
let's do that. So I am a Dark Crystal virgin, and I discovered Dark Crystal, the new TV show, because it's been blasting. Netflix has been trying to get me to watch it for ever since it came out, which is probably the end of August. And Jennifer and I were trying to figure out what to watch one night, and I was like, let's just watch like 15 minutes of this, and then like see how we feel, and then we'll go from there. Well, 2 episodes later, we went to bed because we had to, and it was like I didn't know what to make of it because Dark Crystal. I'm sure everybody else on Earth knows everything about Dark Crystal and knows the lore.
Nope, I'm a virgin too.
Oh, thank God.
Well, the movie is so old. Even if I did see it before, I forgot it.
Yeah, it's like so. First of all, technically, Dark Crystal is kind of like the original movie is kind of like the Sistine Chapel of like puppetry. If there was ever a guitar solo for puppetry, it's apparently Dark Crystal, and I learned all about it as of watching. We started watching the show probably about maybe this time last week. I think maybe this time last week. So let's say conservatively like 5 days. I watched the entire first season, 10 episodes of Dark Crystal. Not ashamed to say that. And then also watched the making of all those 10 episodes. And then I capped all it off with watching the original movie, which is probably the way to go if you have never seen anything Dark Crystal related, because if you watch the movie first, you're not going to watch the TV show. Okay?
That's true.
You're just not going to do it. Okay? And that's just brutal honesty right there. Okay? But apparently...
Because it came out in what year?
82.
Yeah, so
yeah.
there you go.
So yeah, apparently in between, because like the TV show is a prequel to everything that happened before 1982, okay, or the movie that came out in 1982. The little shout outs that happen in the TV show that you don't know that are there until you watch the movie are sublime and beautiful because they don't advertise it. If you are like passively watching the TV show, you will catch it whenever you watch the movie. And there was something somebody said on Facebook this morning. They asked, a friend of mine asked a question about something, and I offered a response to it. And it really, seeing all of these different reactions to her question, really illustrated how much people love this thing on a very visceral level. And you can, because this thing, it's this thing called high fantasy, where nothing else in the world is like it. It's not an allegory or a metaphor for anything else that's going on, but the stuff that happens to these people can be applied to these things that happen in real life, and lots of different things that can be applied. So that is what high fantasy is supposed to do, like the Tolkien definition of high fantasy. Not this crap that you see from Game of Thrones where you got like a Starbucks cup, hanging around on a freaking prop. There are things that happen in like things that they will tell you that's high fantasy, like Game of Thrones, and they'll spend all their money on friggin' dragons for computer generated imagery or whatever, and they'll spend every single dime on that, but then they'll forget to like spend some thought and energy into making sure the armor doesn't look like it came from 13th century England. Okay, when what you're looking at in Game of Thrones is it can be taken from history. All that stuff about the wall, all that crap is from ancient Scottish history. Okay, that applies in a real world example to history. Okay, to Earth, and when you get to Dark Crystal, none of that shit applies. I mean, it's just they literally created a whole entire planet from whole cloth, and they did it for the sole purpose of making sure that that there are ways that evil can be eradicated. That's all you need to know when you watch this thing, is evil can be done away with, and it's not easy, and that's really cathartic and really, really healing. And like I said, you know,
Yeah.
I'm like maybe not even 7 days into being a Dark Crystal fanatic, but I'm all about it. I mean, it did take me 4 episodes to get past the whole puppet thing because I was waiting for any second for like David Bowie to like pop out the side, go like, you know, wave at you or some shit. But it was like none of that. Okay, I think what did it for me was lore, the rock thing, you know, that pops out, and how he communicates, because they gave lore in this world of swords and magic a black black box type like way of communicating, and I just thought that was beautiful. I was like they have married like everything primitive with everything technological that you could put together, and they just did it. And there's no telling what they're gonna do with this, because this world that they've built with the first 10 episodes is filled with gelflings, and in the movie there's only 2 gelflings. So somewhere between having millions upon billions upon trillions of gelflings, some holocaust happens, and there's only 2 left for the movie that takes place in 1982. And like I said, this TV show takes place before anything that happened in 1982. And so the other thing too that's really, 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 really important, and this goes back to what I was talking about the Facebook thing, is that there are people that are concerned that the Jim Henson Company did what George Lucas did to Star Wars and said anything that was in print is not canon. It didn't happen. There's a blanket statement that George Lucas said about all books that none of that stuff applies to his Star Wars movies anymore. And that doesn't apply to Dark Crystal. Anything that was printed, their young adult stuff, all their comics, everything, down to their coloring books, is canon. It's lore. So it applies. There's like all kinds of like little shots to this, that, and the other. I don't know how many more seasons they're going to be doing of this, because this is not a cheap production. They've done every single costume, every single puppet, every single book in a library is handmade, and it's not like it's going to be applied to like another show somewhere. It only applies to Dark Crystal. So, you know, like I said, it's not going to be something that they can use for like another production or whatever. It's just the Jim Henson Company went all in with Netflix on Dark Crystal, and they didn't care about the money for the most part, because they knew that the fans were there to watch it. So this is made for people that love the idea that, you know, evil can be, that bad things happen, and that you can heal from that, but it's going to suck, and it's very frank about how the healing process occurs. It's just beautiful. I love everything about it.
Yeah.
Well, now I have to check it out.
Yeah.
I know.
Because I have friends on Facebook that have been loving on it.
Yes.
It's yeah.
Oh my god.
So nobody else has seen it except for me. Okay.
No.
So I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I'm one of those that was like a fan from back when, because this is like Dark Crystal was my generation. I know we're all close to the same age, but I think that like my end of the generation is like when Dark Crystal and Labyrinth.
You're right, because
really
one of the people
your
on my
jam.
Facebook who are commenting on it are your age.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, we're a little bit older.
Yeah,
I
it
didn't
is
even
my
remember
childhood. Yeah. So yes, I mean I remember Labyrinth. I remember Dark Crystal from back in the day. You know, watching them just all the time, and I've watched it since. You know, so when this got announced, so you said you were watching the making of. One thing that they showed in the making of was like the test footage where they had the puppet against the CGI.
Yes.
And it looks like shit.
Yes.
And I thought, so when this first reboot got announced, I was like, that's what they're going to do to it. Like in my heart, I was so afraid that was what was going to happen.
See, it took me 4 episodes to like get over that very thing. Yes.
And see, it like for me, it was totally natural, because I grew up with Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, Muppets, like all of that. Just you know, Sesame Street. You know, all of that is just. And I mean, I love puppetry anyway.
Right.
So it's probably a little bit different, you know, for me. But I mean that I understand the like weirdness of it at first, but Yeah, like I was afraid that's what was going to happen, and then but then looking at the making of and the Netflix people and all that, they were like, well, what if we just did it all live action? Like, what if we just went back and like just did it, And so it lived up to my expectations. It exceeded my expectations. The whole game. So watching it. It was about 2 episodes in, and my trepidation was it was so close to Game of Thrones in my mind at first, because I was like, okay, are we gonna end up aping Game of Thrones using the Dark Crystal lens, using that story?
Another conversation that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad you said that about the plot holes, because there were people that saw those plot holes, because there was other things too,
Mm-hmm.
and I would see them talk about it, and it was really, really motivating to kind of like.
Oh, are we back?
Mm-hmm. Okay, huzzah!
Okay, sorry, we need to I guess read. Anyway.
Yeah.
Keep going.
No.
So we cut out in the middle of my Dark Crystal thing. So we're still talking about Dark Crystal. Sorry about the technical difficulties. So.
But there was a comment that Lucas made about about how there was plot holes. There's seemingly plot holes that were actually points of exposition
Mm-hmm.
that were used to bring new people in.
Right.
Because I noticed that whenever I would have a conversation, I would see other Dark Crystal fans talk about it. Those were points where I could like actually say, "Oh, I got some tread in this. I saw how that played out in the story,"
Mm-hmm.
and I have a similar question for that. So it's a really genuine, gifted storyteller that can do that. That can like have somebody who has spent an entire lifetime on this stuff for
Mm-hmm.
someone who is just like 2 hours into the show.
Yeah.
And it's like they really just figured that out, man.
Yeah.
But like you talking about the Game of Thrones thing where you were afraid of.
Yeah. So my what you yeah
yeah.
So my point was, what I was saying is I didn't. So I was watching a couple of episodes. You get in the first couple of episodes, and what I was worried about, because of the way it kind of looks at first, is, I mean, you've got this Game of Thrones type vibe going, because you have the clans and you have some, you've got some royalty, you've got some things going back and forth, and my fear was that it was going to be Game of Thrones, like medieval England, played out in Thra, and I didn't want to see that. I wanted to see the history of Thra and the history of the Gelfling clans and all that, and as it plays out, like my fears lessened with every episode, because the history got played out, and it just like life was breathed into it, and the more you found out about it, it just kind of took on a life of its own, with all the different ceremonies. I didn't say this earlier, but yeah, the ceremonies that they add in for the different things, like with the Almaldra, and and that I thought that with the crown was so detailed, and then like the death ceremonies that they did and things like that.
Yeah.
Just stuff that you add in, and it's like it's not of Earth, it is of Thra, but there's that idea behind it that you connect to. That's what you were saying about the high fantasy.
Yeah.
And that's what high fantasy does.
Yeah.
Is you see it through that high fantasy lens, but then underneath there's still the underpinning emotions or rituals or things that you kind of relate to. Yeah.
So there's this oasis in the middle of the season where all the characters end up going and meeting two other characters named the Heretic and the Wanderer.
Mm-hmm.
And in the middle of that, they give you like a crash course on what puppetry is supposed to be. And if you don't know what you're watching, you think that you're watching some sort of like crap production that these two hobos in the desert just put together for the visitors. Okay, but if you know anything about puppetry and what puppetry used to do, they used to have like religious ceremonies, and they used to like use puppets for they used to use puppets for all of these like different like religious things, and you could do anything to a puppet. So when it came time to like do like some sort of fire ceremony with a puppet back in ancient Greece, and it came time to set that sucker on fire, well then that's just what you did, in effigy. There was a point during the middle of that little scene that these two characters do where I was like going, okay, there's some real shit's gonna happen, And you do learn the real nutrition from that scene came from what you learned about what they had to say, and that was the religious experience that you would get from like the puppetry that you would used to get back in ancient Greece.
Yeah.
So they had levels on levels on levels. That goes back to Lucas's concern about Game of Thrones. The Jim Henson Company literally just took what the audience knew already about Game of Thrones because that's camp, okay? And they took that and they just rock starred the hell out of it. They said, "This is our bitch now," okay? And they're gonna own it. All those people that needed a really healthy, good story out of Game of Thrones, they're gonna get it out of Dark Crystal. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
So
That was my favorite part. Like, I loved it because it was so, it's like they were kind of, you're getting some backstory, and it was really neat because they're together and the relationship between those two characters. And but then all of a sudden he's like, we're gonna tell it through the ancient art of puppetry and those jazz hands and everything. And of course, like,
and you're thinking,
and the mystic has
shit.
4 hands, so it's like 4 jazz hands. It was amazing, and I was like, how crazy is that? Like, how meta is that? Sarah Brown and I went back and forth on this. She was like, wasn't that so meta? And I'm like, yes, I know.
Yeah.
Because it was puppets doing puppetry, telling the history of Thra, and it was just like that. It was so brilliant, but just little things like that just, it is. I am excited to see where it goes. I think they completely knocked it out of the park. And,
Well, it's been a joy to sit here and watch you two.
Let me just say,
Derek and I have been behind y'all going, "This is adorable."
nerdgasm.
We've been nerding out. All right.
You should Google puppetry of the penis. Let's see what happens.
Oh,
Don't Google that.
not safe for work.
Yeah, not
I
safe for
heard
work.
about that.
Yeah.
That's-
Okay, so
right.
but as you were talking about fandom, it of course made me think of the fact that they announced this week that we're going to get a Dark Shadows sequel.
Oh yeah.
And
Please let it be better than the movie.
Well, it's going to be because they're actually making it a sequel, and the creators are paying attention to the original work, the Dan Curtis work, and it's going to be on the CW, which to me has done a good job of bringing serialized
Science fiction fantasy
stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Because we were all terrified of Charmed, and I say I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I like.
And
Charmed.
Dark Shadows has always been one of my favorite TV shows, and I feared for they tried to do a remake of it in the 80s or early 90s. That was like maybe a season long at most.
I don't
And I
remember
think
that.
it failed because it didn't realize part of the charm of Dark Shadows was that it was accidentally campy.
Correct. It was not intentional.
It was not intentional.
That's the worst. That's the worst kind of camp children.
Right.
Because it was a 30-minute soap opera from a time about vampires and other mystical creatures in a time where soap operas were all, who's sleeping with whom and who's killing whom. And they just said, we're going to do something really wacky, and we're going to have a really shitty production quality. And, you guys were talking about the Starbucks cup that was left on the Game of Thrones. Whatever shit happened in Dark Shadows all the time. You see reflections of cameramen in the tea set, there was always...
Again, not intentional.
The acting was just so over the top, but it was delicious. And if they can find some way to do that for a modern audience, it could be divine.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, because it was a soap opera and it lasted several years, it's gobs and gobs of episodes, and it had multiverse and time travel and all these other things. So there's gonna be a whole bunch of stuff they can pull from, and so we'll see what they. And the fact they're gonna make it a sequel instead of a reboot, so this is gonna be the future. So it could be really interesting. I'm looking forward.
Cool.
Like present day?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, present day because it was set in like
Oof.
the 1800s and then set in the 70s, and then I think there were some flashbacks. So now it's going to be modern day with probably some flashbacks,
Yeah.
and it should be amazing.
Bond.
so
Cool.
So you didn't like the movie?
Well, the movie was funny, but if
Not to me.
you loved the TV show, you had to really say this
You had
movie.
to hold your nose.
You have to say this movie has nothing to do with this TV show.
Oh.
Like they're different worlds. They're
Yeah.
further apart than like comic books and comic book adaptations. It's like
Oh.
because the movie was a comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dark Shadows was a drama.
Oh.
It was only funny because
They tried too hard.
because of just weird things, like
Again, not intentional. That's what made it funny. Right?
yeah, like for example here's a good idea. Did you watch American Horror Story?
Yes.
Okay, so
Which one though?
Jessica Lange.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, Jessica Lange's character could deliver some lines.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were always over the fucking top.
Right.
So, but hers is very, very deliberate. There was a character in this, I think Hoffman was her name, and she was like the woman that was trying to turn Barnabas back human, but she was also in love with him secretly, and she was also getting occasionally kidnapped or knocked out or whatever. And she would also deliver some kind of wacky ass lines and some great face. And she had red hair, so you have to add that into it. Ginger.
Rude.
And the camera work would like zoom in on her, and she would always be doing something weird with her face, like as the music's playing in the background as they're about to break for commercial. So so she's kind of like. So I think Jessica Lange could totally do it. She could rock the fuck out of that.
Well, that'd be good.
Yeah, that'd be worth seeing then.
Nice.
Yeah, and like I said, and whew, it was something else.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, the other thing too, you think about vampires as they're presented often like sexy and charming, and he was,
Right.
kind of regal and debonair, but he was also kind of old, or at least
Yeah.
he was probably actually my age, but back then, they looked a little bit older.
Right.
So, I was just thinking,
Mm-hmm.
who is he trying to get,
Mhm.
Yeah.
And they also had these little children running around,
Mhm.
and I was like, you little badass kids, Someone spank these children.
We
So.
should Google a clip of it, but
Yeah. Okay, so Carnival Row. So you've seen a couple of episodes, is that right?
yeah. So I've seen
one.
I've seen only two. I think is what I've seen. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but I will say that it's interesting. I don't. In listening to you guys talk about Dark Crystal, I don't think it's that good.
Mm-hmm.
Carnival Row is interesting. It is more of a fantasy kind of thing. It's Orlando Bloom. It's is it Cara Delevingne? Cara Delevingne?
Yeah, yeah.
I
I don't know. I can't remember. I don't know how to say her name, but yes.
Yeah, her.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's set in this fantasy world where humans are living with fairies and I think they're called pixies. And then there's also these other characters that are like I can't remember what they call them right now.
Well, they're
but they have the horns. They're like
fawns.
They're like that, but
Like
that's not what they
fawns.
call them.
Right.
But the interesting thing about this show to me is the subtext and really what it's about, because they are the fairies and the whatever those other things are called are very similar to the way immigrants are currently, not just in America, but many other places. Like they are treated poorly. They are treated as almost like slaves, and it's just it's an interesting thing. So
yeah, it's they're the other. They're lower class, second class.
That's right.
And they're refugees from their island where a war has happened.
Right.
A war broke out. Humans brought the war to them. And,
Because we're trouble.
Because they want, they wanted the magic and the everything. So, yeah, it's interesting. It didn't. I mean, I might watch a couple of more episodes to see if it catches me.
Yeah.
But it was the first episode was pretty good.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I
didn't
don't
catch
know
me
that
right
I would
away.
like. I wouldn't go on about it like Dark Crystal.
No, I
But
probably
Dark
won't.
Crystal sounds spectacular, but Carnival
Yeah.
Row is like, it's pretty good.
It was really interesting.
Well, while y'all were talking about that, I had to show
Yeah.
Doug some memes.
Yeah.
Of Dark Shadows.
Dark Shadows.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh my god, it's so funny.
Mhm.
And I'm going, this is going to be my new. So be ready, people. All my responses to things now are going to be memes
Gonna
of
be
Julia
memes from-
Hoffman.
Yes.
And when did
Looking
you,
like
when did you
indoor-
watch Dark Shadows?
When
After school, in front of the TV, and some potato chips, right?
it came on as we got out of school on ABC after General Hospital
Mhm.
when I was probably 7 or 8 years old.
Right.
Mhm.
And yeah.
That was fun.
I know. I remember.
And then Sci-Fi got a hold of it, and we watched it all over again.
Yeah.
Mhm. All right, y'all want to talk about Titans?
Yeah.
That's about Titans.
Yeah.
He's been waiting the whole show.
I've been trying to stay away. I'm sleepy. I've had a
Y'all
hard
get
week.
so excited. I'm gonna have to watch Titans eventually, but y'all just get so excited about
Because
Titans.
it's so good.
They need like I'm gonna say what I said in chat. So somebody needs to find somebody to do some trailers for Titans because the 2 trailers for Titans that have come out have been awful.
Have they?
Yes. They have been terrible. They do not like. I watched them and I'm like, I'm not gonna watch this shit. This is terrible. Like this is worse than a CW drama. Is what it looks
Is it the
like
F
from the
Batman thing?
trailers. It
No.
was. Well, it's just the way from what we have talked about. It is the way that the trailers are portraying the characters, and it's not true to the way the characters are actually being portrayed in the series. They're choosing like the worst out of context lines and scenes, and so then when you put them together, it's like, oh my gosh, it just looks.
Don't watch the trailers, folks.
Yeah,
Just
don't watch the
show.
trailers.
These
Just go watch the
these
show.
trailers were
apparently.
made for people that watched
So-
Adam West Batman.
Yeah, that's a good way to put
That's
it.
exactly what it
Yeah.
is.
Well, no, it's
Which is
either
sad
Adam
because-
West Batman or like edgy like teenagers.
Which is sad
Like,
because to me
yeah.
it's DC's perfect answer to the good seasons of Marvel's Netflix shows.
Yeah.
It has that kind of overall darkness, but it's not as dark, and there's a good amount of humor in it. But the main thing is the characterization is so spot on.
And see, the trailers make it look so off.
Yeah, well, let me just, and here's another thing too, as I follow a message board about it, and a lot of people come from the Titans from a lot of different places. So for some people, they only know the Titans cartoons, and
Right.
some only know.
Right.
Which that's a travesty too, because
It is.
Teen Titans the cartoon was actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
Teen Titans Go is
It's
like
pretty horrible. But even
It's go away.
Yeah, Teen Titans.
and
Well,
so
it's
you have to start
yeah.
with the fact that you've got the Marv Wolfman, George Perez stories as your
Mm.
first blueprint.
Yeah, that was the.
And then you've got Jeff Johns' reboot.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got the Titans cartoons. And what this show does is it borrows a little bit from all of those things,
Mm-hmm.
but then it also throws some new twists in, and that's part of what makes it so enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take my favorite character, Donna Troy. She isn't in it that much. She didn't show up till like episode 7 or something.
Mm-hmm.
But she's been in all the new episodes, and I think their air pressure just went off. but
It was hilarious.
but it sounded like a cat hissing or King Cobra or something.
Yeah, like the air freshener over on Derek's shelf just went on. I was like,
And I gave it a sign. It was like, yeah,
All
fuck
right.
you too. And it's strong too. Like that.
It's pretty powerful over here, man. Pretty fresh over here.
So Don Troy, her characterization is so beautiful and perfect. The actress is hitting all the right notes, and the writing is spot on. But they've made some slight tweaks to her history that we don't know the full depth of. Like they'll make a
She hinted at it in this.
they
last
they
episode.
hint at things, and you're like, ooh, that's close to the original, but that's a little different here. And what does that really mean? And
So, like, like this, like in the first episode, which by the way was not strong to me that first
Right.
episode, but it showed from her original storyline,
Right.
or origin,
The fire
in her
But
house,
instead of her
where
being
Wonder
a
Woman
baby,
comes
she
in
was
and-
like a little girl.
correct. She was a little older,
And her dad was there, and
Right.
she knew him.
right?
Which is really different from the original, but
Right.
you got the same emotion of
Right.
being taken. And then she mentioned in this last episode that she was
Half human.
Yeah, half human. And I thought, oh, because
See, I
in the
did too.
comic it's always been, well, she was human but given powers by the Amazons. Then she was human but given power by the Titan gods. Then it was, and now it's
Then she was half god, or
yeah, and then she's been a recreation
Titan.
of Diana. She's been so many different things, and I think they've really distilled it in a really nice way. Jason Todd is in this. Never been a Jason Todd fan. They're actually making him interesting, and her interactions with them are fucking hilarious. Starfire, which when they first announced the show, people gave her a hard time because of her outfit and her hair and blah blah blah, but it all made sense in the context of the story. And she also kills it as far as the character. But if you only knew Starfire from the cartoon, you'd be like, well, I don't understand what's going on. This isn't it. This is definitely more like the
Like the
Wolfman
original
Perez.
Wolfman Starfire. Yeah.
Right.
it's a little bit more. And this is gonna sound crazy, but it's a little bit more human. Like
She's-
there's no
Yeah.
She doesn't have that alien naivete,
Right.
but she does have the mix of deep love and humor and ferocity. And it's just so cool. And then Raven is much more like the Jeff Johns Raven, which is the younger Raven,
Yeah.
which is Scar's age. Hawk and Dove, really cool because I'm going to spoil it because we're in season 2 now. You find out in season 1 that Hawk, to protect his brother Don from being molested by the high school coach, substituted himself. He says, no, don't go to the coach's office, I'll go. Don didn't understand it. He's like, no, the coach wants to talk to me. And he's like, no. And he sacrificed his body and his childhood innocence to protect his brother. And it's just fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
And then that carries, that trauma carries throughout his adulthood. And then, he develops a drug problem and this, that, and the other, and Don gets killed and falls in love with Dove, and it's just so much goes on. Even though they spread a lot, because the first season is what, 9,
It's
10
10 episodes.
10
isn't it?
episodes?
Something like that.
They packed a lot in that.
I don't think
And
it even got to 10. I think it was more like 8.
Was
They
it
shortened
bigger?
it.
Yeah.
I think it was supposed to be 13. I think they did 11.
Okay.
We're gonna go with that. But it should have been. At times it seemed like there's not enough action or the story's moving too slow, but it was really just perfectly paced. The problem was the season opener for season 2 was supposed to have been the finale for season 1.
That would have made more sense.
And so it was poorly edited. But so here's what it did. The first third of the show, fantastic.
Yeah.
Middle, too fast. Back end, fantastic. Because they introduced you to Bruce Wayne finally. You get to see Dick and Bruce interact.
Yeah.
And at first when they announced who was going to play Bruce, it's one of the actors from Game of Thrones. He looks about 60. I think he's supposed to be in his early 50s. I think it's the age range they're going for. But I'm just going. Because they also have hinted that, he's still fighting crime as Batman with the Justice League.
Right.
And I'm thinking, I don't know what kind of crime you fight. You look like I could blow you over with, so, but characterization, perfect.
Yeah.
And I just can't wait to see what they're going to do next. So yeah, it's doing all the things for me, and I want everybody to give it a fucking chance because it's so well done. And after that, Stargirl starts soon. So again, DC Universe is really hitting home runs with everything they're doing.
Oh yeah.
Anybody else want to talk about the Titans?
I have not watched it. Have you watched it? You haven't
I've
watched
just
it?
watched the trailers.
So.
You guys
Sean?
I love it.
All right. Okay. One more thing. So I will say I don't think that. I think since last time we've had some announcements. Mandalorian got a decent trailer. And so it looks awesome. I know nobody here is a Star Wars fan except for me.
Oh, because I was over here going, what is that?
Yeah, I know.
Now that's a strong
really good
statement.
trailer. I was like, that's a really good
That is a
trailer.
strong statement.
I know the
Star Wars
I was like, isn't that
I'm
an
a
instrument?
fan.
That's a
I'm not a
mandolin.
crazy fan.
Okay, well, yeah, so...
There is a difference
I was like,
between
man,
fan
Mandalorian
and crazy
is
fan.
Right, yeah, I guess so.
Oh my god.
Is the Mandalorian...
It's in the Star Wars
It is
universe.
in the Star Wars universe.
Okay.
It happens shortly after Return of the Jedi. So it's between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. And it follows a bounty hunter who is a Mandalorian, which is like Boba Fett.
Okay.
So he has similar armor, But it's essentially just him. Right now we really don't know a whole lot. It looks kind of like a the old David Carradine.
It's like a Western almost.
It is. It's almost like a Western,
You mean
but
Kung
at the
Fu?
same time,
It's like
Kung Fu, where he's
Tofu.
kind of roaming the country,
Oh.
kind of roaming around by himself, and kind of just
gonna walk the
So do you think it's going to be good?
So I do think it's going to be good.
It's Pedro Pascal,
but
right?
it's Pedro Pascal.
I'll watch it for that.
And so I'm thinking it's like him. I have a feeling that it's going to be him, kind of doing bounties and then getting wrapped up in something big. It's kind of the feeling that I'm getting.
We got to
So
watch
we
the
can
trailer?
watch the we can watch the
Disney
trailer.
Plus only $4.99 a month
Yeah.
or $6.99 a month, whatever.
It's
Because
not-
$4.99 is Apple Plus.
That's it.
Yep. Probably more than I love X-Men, but anyway. I know Star Wars is my first love. Like,
Okay.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay. Ow.
There's some, Titans. But this, so I'm so excited for this because we've had the Skywalker, whatever trilogy of trilogies. Trilogy of trilogies.
And he's straight.
I couldn't help myself.
Because that was pretty gay.
So we've had the Skywalker trilogy of trilogies, and it's been all about the Jedi and the Sith, right? And so Rogue One, I think, did such a good job of showing the other side, and a different side of the Star Wars universe, kind of a grittier side.
Rogue One was really good.
Yeah,
It was really good.
until it like had to be kind of shoehorned in to connect to New Hope,
Yeah.
But yeah, Rogue One, it was. I mean, I loved seeing something new, And so Mandalorian seems like it is going to be that same thing. It's going to be showing that gritty side, that a little bit more of what's going on in the rest of the universe.
Which
So,
they need to, because I'm
Yeah.
I'm not as big a fan of Wars. I'm more of a Trek guy.
Right.
But I see them all,
Yeah.
and I'm weary of them.
Mhm.
You seen one, you seen them all.
Well, and that's the thing is, I
sorry.
understand that. No, it's fine. I mean, I'm gonna love it, but and I hate Star Wars fans. I am a Star Wars fan, but I hate Star Wars fans
They're
because
so mean.
it's like so viscerally angry at things,
Bunch of
and
incels.
instead of just like. But instead of just
Calls it like he's
either taking it for what it is or just
Know your
letting
audience,
it,
Mark.
or just letting it go, But I mean, it's like they take pride in hating something, It's like, okay, I don't
Leave
like
the Asian
this.
girl alone.
I hate this, so I'm gonna.
Yeah,
right,
they attacked her.
Seriously, they totally Kelly Marie Tran. Like total. It's like, why do we have to be like this? I say we. I mean, I am not like that, but like, why do fans have to be like that? I just don't. I don't understand it. And it's like this badge of honor that oh, I hate the Disney Star Wars. I'm going to separate, and I'm never going to watch anything but the original trilogy and read the extended universe books from the '90s. And that's the hill
And then
I'm
you
gonna
see him
die,
at the theater.
And it's
Yep.
like,
Get off my
and then you end
lawn.
up seeing them at the theater anyway, probably. Yeah.
Darn kids.
It's ridiculous. So anyway, okay, so that's coming out. I'm kind of excited for that, and we got At a D23, we got some new Star Wars footage. I posted that on the Facebook page, so you can go back and look at that if you want. It's going to look really cool.